This isn't the intro yet. Real quick, before it gets started, wanted to let you know that in this episode, I talk about an interview last week that we did, but actually it'll be next week's episode. Anachrony. It's going to be a running joke for the rest of the podcast life. So next week's episode is going to be with Ryan from Cardboard Conjecture. I'm really excited for you to hear that one. We had a lot of fun, but the guest for this episode has some time-sensitive information in there, and you'll learn about it in just a few. So without further ado, here you go. Welcome to the Board Game Community Show, the podcast where we get to know people throughout the board game community. So self-explanatory. I'm your host, Riley Stock, and today we've got a really weird experience here. I'm tripping out because I am face-to-face with our guest today, who has biked all the way from Rhode Island just to be here. Phil Amylon.
Yay!
Welcome!
Thank you. I'm glad to be your first face-to-face guest. I'm excited about that.
Me too. It's really weird. Like, I could just reach out and not touch a screen.
Want a high five? Bam! Just happened.
We're both vaccinated, okay?
Yeah.
People, it's okay.
That was a prerequisite for me going on the trip. Like, I wasn't going to go until I got vaccinated.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was a big deal to me. I was hiding. I was super hiding.
Was
a while.
Rhode Island hard to get vaccinated or not?
No. Okay. No, it was really great. New England, I think in general, took everything really seriously, and people got vaccinated when they were supposed to. For the most part, I can't speak for everyone, but
right.
Yeah. I remember I was so relieved when I got to make an appointment for my dad, because he's almost 70, he smoked for his entire life. I spent most of the pandemic worrying about him. So yeah, I got to take him and then got myself taken care of like a month later once the age requirement dropped down. Yeah, it was great.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, here it was really easy. I found out that I was in like the high risk category because I had this disease as a kid some research came out that like kids who had that disease like get COVID and they're like fine for a little while, and then all of a sudden like afterwards they get something else.
Ooh.
Like COVID makes them susceptible to something else that was like putting a lot of strain on their body. It was like having more long-term effects than even COVID.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, I went in to go see if I could do it, and it was the day that it opened up to my age range. So I was like, well, great. I'm getting it now anyway.
Yeah.
But here, it's like super easy to get it now. There was like the first month, it was packed, and now it's, we haven't reached our numbers that we should be reaching, but everyone's just refusing to go do it.
Right.
Because the government is obviously trying to mind control us.
Oh, God. I don't even know how to respond to that. I did joke about it on my blog. My way of announcing I got a vaccine was I titled a post, I upgraded to 5G. I don't quite know how they fit little nano chips inside me. I don't know what they're doing with it. Obviously, it's controlling my brain.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Does it make it so that other people get better reception around you too? Because that would be great. I'm all for that.
My reception has been a lot better, although I did coincidentally get a new phone around the same time. So, who knows? It was all a plot to get a phone. That's what it was. Yeah.
Nice.
Ugh.
Oh, man. I'm glad. How's the biking been? All right, people, I'm going to be straight with you. Phil and I have gotten to know each other pretty decently over the last 2 days because he's been here for 2 days. But
it's true.
So we did a playtesting night with Rob Kramer, who does the Graham Carnival, and
Tessa.
And his wife, Tessa.
Yeah.
Yes. I was going to mention her.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then the next night, which was last night, we got together just to play games.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
I won my first game of Wingspan ever.
And absolutely killed it. In fact, I had a dream last night, and I woke up and I thought that I won. And I was like, oh, I forgot to count these points. And I realized it was a dream, and I was like, oh, that's a weird, I feel like a poor sport just for having that dream.
And that's fine. My dreams recently have been. Last night, I woke up in like a cold sweat, disoriented, because, as usual, I'm sleeping in a place I'm not familiar with. Over the last few months, that's been a constant thing. So I I probably scared Rob and Tessa with whatever words were coming out of my mouth because I thought I was falling into a pit somewhere. So there's also that.
Oh my goodness.
I'll take the board game dream any day.
Yeah. That would be a fun noise to hear in the middle of the night coming from your guest in the other bedroom.
Just freaking out.
Or did you guys share bedrooms? Are you all three just in one bedroom?
No.
Oh, okay.
They have like an office with a little twin size bed in it. That's where I'm crashing.
I guess we haven't talked about this. What's been the staying situation for you? Like, do you do hotels? Do you just try and crash with people?
Yeah, so mostly it's been hotels. I started off ambitiously thinking that I was going to camp, and I had camping stuff with me, and I did that a few times, and it didn't work out so well, and I got sick of carrying the extra 8 pounds of stuff up and down. I was in the Appalachians at the time that I got rid of it, and so I don't do that anymore because that's gone now. I gave it all to I was at a restaurant and I just asked the waitress, hey, I want to get rid of this stuff. I don't want to throw it out. Does anyone want it? And the hostess of the restaurant wanted it. And so that worked out really well. So I didn't just jettison it. I gave it to someone and hopefully it's gotten some use. So that's exciting. But yeah, so for the east of the Mississippi, half of my trip, I had major stops planned out where I was staying with people. So I've stayed with a lot of designers on the trip. And then kind of since then, it's been a lot of hotels.
Yeah.
I've also there's a bicycling app or website, I guess you'd call it, a community called Warm Showers, which is kind of like couch surfing for bicycle people. These are people that are really into cycle touring, and they open up their homes to other people that are on these sort of long bicycle tours, which is what we call these long trips.
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, you can crash with us. And I've only done that a couple times because it's a little nerve-wracking to just go to a stranger's house and with nothing in common whatsoever outside of the biking thing.
Yeah.
So I've done it a couple times. Both times it's been rewarding and I've had a great time. So I should probably try and do that a little bit more for the rest of my trip. We'll see.
Save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And get company. I'm sure it gets lonely biking so many miles a day.
That is very true. Yeah. I think the loneliest stretches, northwestern Colorado into northeastern Utah is just it had me down. It's just an empty, barren wasteland, and the smoke is still there, and it just makes everything look eerie and like it's on a totally different planet. Yeah. I feel very alone out there sometimes.
I get that. I don't know how it is everywhere else, but a lot of the days through the haze here, the sun is red. Is that how it is out east? Just because the smoke is so thick and it distorts it.
Yeah, so my experience with the haze didn't really start until I was in Wisconsin. I was riding up the Mississippi, and there were a few small towns, and I noticed the haze start, and then it went away for a few days. But then the day I left Minneapolis, it was their worst air quality in Minnesota on record. And it was so thick that people were disappearing into the sidewalk. I vividly remember seeing a woman pushing a stroller and she just disappeared.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so crazy. I took a few pictures. Pictures don't do it justice. And the sun was just all sorts of different colors. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I remember at one point looking directly at the sun and being like, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And yet here I am. Oh, yeah, that's a bad habit.
Yeah. I did the same thing. And I was like, I shouldn't be able to, I should be blind, right? That's what they say when you're a kid.
Exactly.
It was kind of nice, though, when I was driving driving west and sun was setting. And it didn't hurt my eyes because it was the sun's right there, but it's not blinding me today. So that was a semi-nice thing.
Little wins.
Yeah.
That's what
teeny, tiny win.
In the face of catastrophic damage to our environment, at least I could ride west for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We here in Salt Lake, when a month or so ago, we had I think they said we had the worst air quality in the world.
Ouch.
Because the smoke just gets trapped in the valley.
Yeah.
And then we also have major pollution problems and inversion, all sorts of wild stuff. That was when we were in Portland. So we were we're away from it.
Good call.
Yeah. It wasn't planned. That wasn't the reason to go west
Oh yeah,
towards the fire.
you were doing something different.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I'm riding through the future dystopia, which is now. There were a few days where I was riding in an N95 mask because the air quality was so bad that they suggested that anyone who had to be outside for like work or whatever should be wearing these things.
Whoa.
Yeah. That was around the time that I made the decision to not go on my northern route, and I headed south just to escape the smoke. And there was a period of time in Nebraska where the skies were clear.
Oh, good.
And that changed when I got back to Denver, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many times have you made this trek? I know this is a different route, but how many times have you biked across the U.S.?
0.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, what am I at? Like 4/5 of the way through or something? So at 80% of one time, I have done this thing. Yeah. It's funny. People talk to me as if I'm some kind of seasoned bicyclist or something like that. And I am not. Let's see. The last time, before the pandemic, the last time I had ridden a bicycle was in 2010. I worked on the 2010 census, and rather than, but one of the things you have to do on the census is chase people down who don't fill out their form. So I was one of those people. And rather than do that on my car, I was just like, I might as well ride a bike. It'll be more fun that way. So I did that, and then I didn't ride one for a decade. And then during the pandemic, I think a lot of us wanted some kind of outdoor hobby. And I could think of no better way to ensure that people socially distance from me than being the sweaty, gross guy on the bicycle. And so I got a bike. There was a bike shortage, so I had to get one on Craigslist. So I bought one, and it was great. It got me around. I rode around Little Roadie, as we call it, all last summer and into the fall, and developed I guess I hate to say caught the bug in these times because that's not how you should do that, but I developed a passion for riding around. And and then because all the playtesting had moved on to Discord, all of a sudden I was playtesting with all these people from all across the United States. And that's when it clicked that I could sort of combine both of these things. Because I'd sort of kicked around the idea of traveling across the country in some sort of weird way for most of my life. Like I've done the road trip. Like I did a road trip across the South one time. But yeah, I wanted to do something weird like this. And that's how they came together. I realized that there were these stops along the way that I could make. And then all of a sudden the trip had a purpose. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to do it then.
Yeah. That is really, really cool.
Thanks.
Bravo for like just going for it.
Yeah.
Your job. What do you do? We're going to dive out of board games.
Oh yeah, we'll do some other stuff. So professionally, I guess I consider myself to be a burnt out high school teacher. I used to teach high school English for about 6 years. I did some variation of middle or high school English. I coached track and tennis. But yeah, at this point, teachers need to be paid twice as much and teach half the number of classes. And that's the point where I will sort of reevaluate whether or not I would go back. It's not enough. People are like, oh, you get summers off, and that's hilarious. I can think of no other time in my life where I thought more about school and how I was going to, improve the lives of my students for next year than during the summer when I actually had time to think about that sort of thing. Teaching is a 24/7 job, at least for me. And I love the kids and I miss them a lot, but I do not miss the incredibly ridiculous amount of paperwork or administration or in some cases like school committees that are made up of ridiculously reactionary fools.
Yeah. Totally get that.
Yeah.
Kimmy, my wife, is a teacher. And so we averaged out her average week, how many hours she's actually working.
Never do that.
I know.
So bad.
And so then we added it up for how many days she works throughout the year. And it was far more hours than somebody with a full-time job taking no vacations. If you worked 40 hours a week, every week of the year, you still work less hours than a teacher does in their 9, 10 months, whatever it is. I don't know how long it is.
Well, yeah, the school year is 9.5-ish months.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. You talk about people taking vacations and they like to talk about the school vacations you get. Yeah, the school vacation weeks were the weeks that I got to work only 40 hours. I got to catch up on my grading. I got to catch up on my planning. I got to do professional development. Yeah, all that stuff that happens during school vacation.
Yeah. Well, I think exhaustion too sometimes. When you hit those 3-day weekends or even just regular weekends, sometimes you're just so exhausted from all those hours you already put in. You're burnt.
Yep.
Like Kimmy right now is just like, I'm so tired. I do not want to do much. So
yeah, it's a constant state of burnout. So I left teaching in late 2019. I got out just in time. Especially, I still keep in touch with a lot of my old teacher friends, and it has been a nightmare dealing with parents and students and not great guidance from governments. I was also a reference librarian for a while, like 3 years.
What's that?
So working in a library, there are different departments you can be in. And one of them is the reference desk. And the reference desk is generally where patrons come to ask for help.
Oh, okay.
So if you're looking for a specific book, you would come and talk to us.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I usually just avoid people, so I don't.
Solid play.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that for a while, and that was kind of like, that's what I was doing when the pandemic actually hit. And of course, the library closed during that time. 2020 was kind of I sort of punted on the entire year. I was planning on taking the entire 2020 off and going to conventions and networking with people and pitching games. And obviously that did not happen.
You fool.
I am indeed a giant fool.
No, that's really cool. And a couple of conventions are starting back up, though hesitant about some of them. I went to a convention, which was fun, a month and a half ago. Cool. Are you still planning on trying to get to the one is it in Portland? Seattle?
So PAX West is happening right now. It started yesterday. Yeah, I'm not making it for that.
Okay.
I probably still have a couple weeks before I can dive into the Pacific Ocean, or however I choose to do that, just fall backwards. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably might just run straight at it. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to be a while before I get out there still.
This is a very side thing, and I just realized, how are you getting back? Are you just going to plane back?
So I'm kind of scared to fly. That's not my thing. I like ground travel. So I will probably do some combination of car/train to get back to the East Coast. I'm going to stay on the West Coast for a while. I have some relatives out there. My brother lives in LA, and I have an uncle who lives. I have two uncles that live just outside of San Francisco and a couple different places sort of around there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have good friends in Seattle and some board game design people in San Francisco that I think I'll hang out with for a bit. So I don't know when exactly I'm going to head back east. I know I want to be back east in time for PAX Unplugged and then the holidays.
Nice.
Yeah.
PAX West, do they do board games too?
Yeah.
Is that only board? PAX West is video games
PAX West
too, right?
I think it's mostly video games, but they definitely have board games.
Okay, because that's why it wasn't clicking to me. I was like, I always get excited for PAX West for the video games. Literally no idea there were board games involved.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some of that there.
I knew PAX Unplugged was.
I don't know how much there are this year because of pandemic. I don't think there's Protospiel stuff going on or whatever their unplugged section would be called there.
Yeah.
But they definitely have stuff. And I mean, the design community in Seattle is amazing.
Yeah. Next year, I think we'll go to Seattle and try and hang out with some either designers or just gamers. Who cares? There's so many. They have a huge game community.
Yeah.
There.
It's all good.
Yeah. So do you think you'll make it up there? Are you going to bike up there? Or do you think at that point you're like, I made it to the West Coast, I'm driving?
Yeah, once I touch that ocean, I'm open to other modes of transportation.
Okay.
The goal is the cross country on the bike. I've cheated a couple times in dangerous situations. I've allowed someone to give me a ride.
What a wimp.
I know, right?
Just get hit by lightning. Come on. Shake it off.
That was so scary. Yeah.
Did you want to share that?
Yeah. For people that are not familiar, so one of my scary situations, apparently, I didn't know this, and I guess you wouldn't know this if you're not someone who lives in a mountainous area, but over a certain threshold, 5,000 feet, it becomes very difficult to predict the weather. So basically on any day where it's predicted to just be sunshine and rainbows all day, sometime afternoon, it could just decide, you know what, it was warm and that caused some changes in the air. We're going to have a spontaneous thunderstorm. So I was warned by quite a few locals in Denver, hey, make sure you're down off the mountain by noon. And of course, I planned my entire days around this for a while. And I got stuck on top of a mountain at about 9,000 feet at 11:30 a.m. This was before I was told it was going to be dangerous. And out of nowhere, this thunderstorm just appeared, and there was a lightning bolt about a football field away from me that scared the bejesus out of me. And I pulled over and stopped and just like sort of frantically waved my arms at the cars coming by. And thankfully, this very nice girl named Sophia, who was a college student / mountain biking coach, who had a bike rack on her car, was like, yeah, you can hitch a ride down the mountain with me. And so that's what happened. And she was my hero.
Yeah. That is so awesome. I saw you gave her a board game.
Yeah. So one of the quirky things that I did on this trip, before I realized how heavy things were going to be and how little space I was actually going to have on my bike, Tim Blank is the president of the Boston Game Makers Guild. He also teaches game design at a university, and he has a few published games. One of them is called Oh My Gods, and it's a pretty small card game that's kind of like a modern take on Clue that I think is cool. And I was like, and he had several of these, and he was like, do you want to take some across the country with you and give them to people? I think I sort of proposed the idea foolishly, and so he gave me 6 copies, and I ended up only taking 4 because I really couldn't fit any, but I made it work. And I've been giving copies of his game to people as I've progressed.
No, my goodness.
And Sophia was the last one. As we were riding down the mountain, she talked about how she likes board games and she really needed to sort of start a collection. And I was like, well, I have the perfect thing to give to you. Yeah. So it was liberating to give away the last one, so I didn't have to carry it anymore.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to be able to sort of like pay someone in some way for saving me from, at the very least, having a massive panic attack on the top of a mountain in the middle of a thunderstorm.
Oh,
That's not what I want to do.
Like, that can be stressful in a car.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even getting wet. You're just driving in it. Oh, man, I can't even imagine. Well, thanks, Sophie, for saving Phil.
Big time.
Okay, so you mentioned the Boston
Game Makers Guild.
Game Makers Guild. That's what it's called. Yeah.
GMG.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in that?
Meetup.com. Yeah.
Oh.
Are you familiar with Meetup.com?
No.
Oh, my. So Meetup.com is fantastic. I don't want to call it a social network exactly. Basically, it's a website you can go to. You can type in what interests you are, and then it will tell you what groups meet around those interests in whatever radius that you're looking for.
Whoa.
I went on there. I originally went on there because a high school friend was running like a tennis meetup on there. And so that's how I got involved in the website. And then I put in some other interests, and I found a board game design group. And I just started going to the meetings, at least when in-person was a thing. So this was probably, I started going like 5 or 6 years ago, are held at Emerson College in Boston. So they're very official and professional. And I just started going to that, and it took me probably a few years to, I think, learn the ropes and not be nervous and bring my own stuff. Like, I went for a long time and just tested other people's games before I was comfortable bringing my own games. But yeah, now, I mean, a lot of those people are good friends of mine, and that's one of the things I love about the board game community is that, you know, we all sort of share this passion, and from that, I think really interesting and great connections develop.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We all want to play games with people that we like. You know, like, and I say it every episode almost, like, this is what it's about. You know, like getting to know people that you could play games with, or like, or who will make a game that you want to play, and you know that that's coming from a cool person, and get to know people behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your games. You have one.
I have one published game.
Right.
Let's see. That was a co-design with a friend of mine from Providence, James Searles, who owned a card shop at the time. So I was always there playing Magic, or we actually played a lot of dead CCGs there. So we played a ton of the old Lord of the Rings Decipher game and Star Wars and stuff like that. And then we actually worked together on a different design for a while that was like probably too big. And so we started doing something smaller. So we came up with this thing called Crown of Aragon, which is a 2-player sort of tug-of-war card game set in medieval Spain. So he already owned like a video game publishing company, so he just decided to print 300 copies of Crown of Aragon, and we brought them to the very first PAX Unplugged. It was such a thrill to be demoing my own game and selling my own game on the convention floor. We sold like 250 copies, which sounds impressive, but it was only like a $10 buy. It was a pretty easy thing to just be like, okay, sure, I'll take this with me. But it was still great. It was still like just a ton of fun. Yeah. And then we tried to do a Kickstarter, which didn't work because we had just sold it to everyone who was interested in it. But oh well. But it was definitely a fantastic learning experience, and I had a ton of fun with it. And it's so funny though, because I don't know if I remember how to play the game because it was like 5 years ago that I worked on it.
Oh my goodness!
I'm sure it would come back to me, but it's funny how that happens because since that time I've definitely designed a ton of other games, none of which that have quite made it yet, but a few that I think are pitch ready. And I think we all have kind of, as designers, our box of prototypes that's like, yeah, maybe I'll get to those, or maybe they're just awful.
Yeah. I'm building mine up.
Yeah, good time.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the ones you haven't that you're working on? Are any close?
I mean, close in the sense that I feel comfortable pitching them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I am as a designer. I know there are a lot of different design paths. Some people want to self-publish and go to Kickstarter, and some people want to pitch, and that's me. I would much rather do the design work, bring it to publishing house where they have resources and expertise to sort of, make it a product. As much as I do think about games as products, but
yes,
what I know I don't want to do, at least with my own designs, is be kind of in the weeds and dealing with shipping and a whole bunch of things I don't get.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so the designs that I feel like are pitch ready are, I guess my favorite is a cooperative game called Am I the One? It's a pretty light game. Everyone at the table gets a picture, and they're all the same except for one person's picture is different. And using limited communication, you have to figure out if you're the person that has been dealt a different image. And it's sort of like a self-discovery kind of metaphor almost, because you only have like 30 seconds to figure this out. And, once somebody flips their picture, they've made the decision for the entire group. If they're right, then awesome, the group has succeeded and you pass and move on. If they're wrong, the group has failed. If you fail a certain amount of times, you lose the game.
Yeah.
And that one's really fun and tense, and it has some really cool moments in between rounds where there's like this explosion of talking, like, why didn't you flip? Or I couldn't believe I was the one because I thought that you and you matched up with me. So that's been really fun. I like that game a lot.
That's cool. That's like The Mind. That got me thinking of The Mind. Have you played that one, right?
Yeah. So I think I did sort of pitch this as a cross between Dixit and The Mind.
Okay, yeah.
And then, let's see, what else do I have? I have an 18-card game that I co-designed with a student. I was mentoring a high school student. And one of the things that I think is fun to do game design-wise is, I forget where I read this. It might have been in Jesse Schell's book, The Art of Game Design. But kind of like the first day of class, you're like, okay, take tic-tac-toe and change one thing about it. And what would that look like? And so we riffed back and forth for a little bit, and we decided that it would be really fun if tic-tac-toe was an 18-card game, and you simultaneously revealed where you wanted to place your mark. And so the way this one works is if it's your turn and your opponent figures out where you're going, they actually steal that spot from you. So there's a whole lot of Yomi in this game.
Oh.
Yeah, the first couple of turns are usually pretty tame, but after that, it gets like you can see in the playtest the light sort of clicking in people's brains, and then like it becomes just very much like the Sicilian game in Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
You call that,
yeah.
The switching the drink. Yeah, it's very much like that.
I know that you think that I think that I know that you think, that I'm going to go here, which means I'm not going to go there. Or I think that's cool.
Exactly. And so that's really fun. I like that. That's actually the one game that I brought with me because it's so light. It's only 18 cards. I can fit it on the bike just fine.
Why don't we play that?
I don't know. I left it at Rob and Tessa. My bad.
Well, you played Rob's. We played Critter Grove, which
true.
Was great.
Yeah.
We played mine, which was a brand new implementation of
It was the first draft.
Yeah, it was the first draft, and that was great. I got some awesome feedback.
For sure.
Have you gotten to play test very many games throughout this journey?
Yeah. I've play tested a lot of stuff. It's been really fun. I spent 5 days in Brooklyn with David Gordon, and I got to go to Gil Hova's group, and we played just a ton of things.
Cool.
And yeah, really at every sort of major stop. So in Trenton, New Jersey, I play tested some games with Doug, who designed Kids on Bikes.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
He was working on a really cool cooperative garden building game, which is funny because I generally don't like cooperative games, and I think it was around the time that I met Doug and played his game that my heart sort of like the ice around my heart melted in terms of cooperative games, because his game was really interesting because of the limited communication aspects. I found that I really enjoy cooperative games with limited communication. So like Hanabi and The Mind is like published examples of how that works. I love that stuff.
So for the crew, you and I talked about that.
That's just me not really being good at
trick-taking.
or enjoying trick-taking games.
That's fair.
Outside of Hearts. My family used to play a lot of Hearts growing up. But I like that because it's very much like I'm going to stick you with something. That's very much the take that element of Hearts is where it shines.
I was going to say, because I didn't know if you liked co-op very much. I thought you said you weren't big into it. And then you talked about your design being co-op. And I was like, wait a minute.
So that came from a place of me wanting to design a co-op game that I would enjoy.
That's just like mine, where I'm like, I've never played a pick up and deliver game, but people say they suck. So I'm going to try and make one I would play.
Those people.
Yeah.
I am one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun to get it out there.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's one of the fun things to do with design is to take something and try to make it something different in a way that it would resonate with you. And so I think that's kind of how I approach design a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was having success with my first iteration, and then I thought, okay, well, now I want to completely mess that up. Let me try something new and make it more interesting to me, because I was like, okay, this is working at its foundation. And, like, I was probably good enough to... People were telling me it was ready to pitch.
Listen to those people.
I know, but then I was like, but I think it's a little bit boring in some aspects, and I want to try and make it more entertaining. So, we'll see.
Fair.
Anyways, this isn't about me. This is about you.
It's about us. It's about our connection in the community. This is a community show, right?
True,
That's
true.
It's all fair game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This is why I took the trip. This is exactly why, so that I could sort of sit down face to face with people and get to know them and get to experience our connectedness in the board game community. I love that. That's why I'm here.
Sweet. Tender.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, let's dive back to what I would normally cover in the beginning, but because we're face to face, I'm all like,
we're all over the place. We do what we want.
Yeah, and we've been like buddy for the last couple days. So, what got you into board gaming in the first place?
Do you want me to go all the way back to birth? I think. Let's see.
Came out of the womb with a deck of cards.
Yeah. So the first gaming experience I really remember. So I grew up when I was 5. My parents and sister and I moved in with my grandparents on my dad's side. So my grandfather was very much a part of my life all growing up. We lived there for the whole time. So one of my very first gaming memories is playing Memory on the floor in the living room with my grandfather. And we would do this all the time. And that was just, I was like his way of spending time with me is we would play games. Sometimes we'd watch TV and stuff, but it was mostly about games. So we would do that. And then my dad and my grandfather, a few years later, I guess when I was 8 or something, they taught me how to play chess. And the way they did that was every time I lost chess, they would start the next game with one fewer piece. So the next game they would like start without their queen, and then they would start without their queen and their rook. And I think the worst I ever got down to was they started without their queen, their rook, and like a bishop. And then I would win, and they'd be like, okay, this is the level you're at. If you win a few times at this, we'll add some pieces back to the board. And so that was really fun. And so we played a ton of chess growing up, and we like studied chess openings and read chess books together and cool stuff like that. Yeah, I used to be good at that. I'm not anymore. I'm very bad at chess now. But yeah, and then in like middle school, when I had no friends to speak of, and like kids were pushing me into lockers and like all this horrible stuff. What always was like that glimmer of light at the end of the day was I would come home and my grandfather would be there and he would play Hero Quest with me. He was my Zargon, which for people who haven't played Hero Quest, it's like an old D&D type board game where one person is like the game master and the other person gets to play the heroes. So I would play the heroes and he would play the game master. It was my thing. So for how I got into board games as a child, it was like that family connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely carry that with me in my heart wherever I go and play board games. And then like with my friendships, we played a ton of Magic. I credit Magic with basically birthing an entire generation of designers, because half the game of Magic is designing the experience that you want to have. And I always had more fun doing that part. Like I had fun playing the games, but I had so much fun designing the decks. Because I mean, what kind of experience do you want? Do you want a weird, wacky thing? That's what I did. I put together just the most ridiculous decks, and I was like, I'm probably not going to win, but in a big group game, sometimes my thing's going to happen, and it's going to be fun. Yeah. And then, I did the D&D thing. I was the dungeon master for the most part of the group I was in.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was fun. I really enjoy. I haven't played role playing games in a long time, but at the time, that was a really great creative outlet.
Yeah.
And then what got me into real, quote unquote, real board games, like the actual, real's the wrong word, but the sort of tabletop board game experience that has an actual board was Betrayal. Was it called Betrayal in the House on the Hill?
Betrayal at House on the Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I played Risk and Axis and Allies and stuff, but that was the first board game that made me go, wow. I think I was in college at the time. It's just, I can't believe board games can do this. And then from there I was hooked, like big time.
Understandable.
Yeah.
That's a great game.
It is a great game. I think I've played it so much that I'm kind of sick of it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I mean, I've played it hundreds of times, so it's a great game.
I actually borrowed it yesterday when you guys were going to come over, because I was like, well, maybe I can get this played. And I was like, I'm not going to push it, but like, if somebody sees it there and wants to play it, then great. But because I've only gotten to play it once.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you have to experience it. It's so good.
I know.
It's a phenomenal game.
Well, I'm pretty committed to buying the Legacy one.
Yeah.
Because Rob Daffio, the designer, he said that that's like his only game that he actually plays.
Ooh. Okay.
Of his,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's like,
that's high praise.
Yeah.
You usually hate your own stuff.
Right, exactly. And he said it's because like he can play it with his kids and build the game. Mm-hmm. And then when they're done with, the 12 games or whatever it is, then it's this copy that they've created together. And then you can replay it after. So it's not like Pandemic Legacy where you chuck it when you're done. Or I use it for spare parts for prototyping.
Oh, yeah, I have a few games I do that with. I won't say what they are because I respect the design.
Yeah. Well, hey, I do too.
Yeah.
Pandemic Legacy is great. Such an amazing game. I absolutely love it. But the pieces are great afterwards for prototyping.
Oh yeah, that's not a game you can go back and play again, is it?
No,
yeah, you can. Fine. You might as well get some use out.
Exactly.
Of course.
You go back and you just replay the last game. I think is the replayability. And to me, that's just like, well, the fun part of this was the story. Like, I might as well just go play regular Pandemic.
Yeah.
I digress. That's really, really cool, though. So do you have an absolute favorite?
Favorite board game?
Yeah.
Oh, Dominant Species is my favorite.
I've never even heard of this one.
Dominant Species it's a mess. It's, and I mean that in all the best ways. Like, people argue over whether it's a Euro or a Ameritrash game or Amerithrash or however you want to say that word. I like Ameritrash games, so I don't mind using that term.
I do too.
Yeah. I know some people don't, and I get it. It's insulting. I like games like that, heavily thematic games. But it's about you play an animal or like a species of animals. I forget exactly what the terms are, but like I might be the mammals and you would be the reptiles. And we are competing for dominance over the planet before the Ice Age hits. That part is very brutal and harsh, and that's what I love about the game. And then there's also, like, a lot of the game is played in like this worker placement thing where you place all of your workers and then they are all resolved in a sequence. after everyone has placed every single worker down. And I just love it. It's so good. Yeah.
That sounds cool. Yeah, it sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's one of those bigger sort of epic games it's like the main event of the night. It's going to take, 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4, depending.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite of all time. I would say others sort of in that category. I love Terraforming Mars. I love Star Wars Rebellion. I love Twilight Struggle. That's kind of my wheelhouse, is those games. But I also, especially to play with like my siblings and dad, would be things like Avalon or Deception, Murder in Hong Kong or like Coup, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really enjoy those games too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are quicker ones.
Yeah.
Coup is at least. And
Coup's quick. Yeah, and Avalon is, we're talking like 20 minutes to a half hour.
Yeah.
Games that are very easy to teach. Like these are games I would bring to my classroom.
Oh, nice.
We did like a dystopian day because we had like dystopian literature for our summer reading, and our way to sort of tie this in was we did like a whole workshop day. And my sort of section of the workshop was running various board games. So I ran a couple different versions of Coup. There's like regular Coup and then Coup Rebellion. And then we did The Resistance or Avalon as a way to sort of springboard into discussions about trust and, what could it be like in a future where you can't believe what people are saying and how information is being manipulated. And of course, all that ties into reality. So those were fun.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. Kids got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you think you inspired you made some new board gamers?
I hope so.
Nice.
Yeah, we definitely, I also did like a couple of board game design workshop type things at school as like an alternative activity for certain things. The school I taught at still did like a powder puff game. So they were...
Oh, what?
Yeah, so this might not even be a thing that exists in some parts of the country because I find it like kind of ridiculous. It's a day where like the girl students specifically participate in like a football event because of course we couldn't have just girls play football normally. Like God forbid we just do that.
Boys and girls mixing together.
Yeah, it's all out of that.
Cats and dogs, come on.
Yeah, so I think this is sort of a classic Americana type event that happens at certain high schools in rural America. So anyway, for the students that didn't want to do that, some of the teachers on that day would do alternative workshop type things. And so one of the things I would do would be a board game design workshop. And I 15, 20 kids come in, design some games that I thought were going to be really cool.
That is awesome.
So hopefully that inspired some people to pick up the prototyping materials of their choice or whatever. Yeah. Good times for sure.
I've talked to you and then an episode that's not out yet, but it'll come out this week. So last week's guest, Ryan, talked about how he has like a board game club at his school that he started.
Nice.
And I was just like, that's so cool. Like I didn't have anything like that in high school. No. Although I wasn't really into board games much in high school.
So I mean, my high school was pretty small. I graduated in a class of 93, and we had a chess club, and I hopped from chess club to, we convinced one of our English teachers to proctor our RPG club. Oh. So when I was a sophomore, we did RPGs, and then for the next 2 years after that, we basically had like a Magic the Gathering club.
Oh, cool.
We had enough people. We had like 20 or 30 people. So
wow.
Yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah. Like we didn't have, or maybe I just didn't know anything about it. Maybe it wasn't cool enough to join those clubs or anything.
I don't think there was any cool threshold for the RPG club.
Yeah, that was actually my first experience was in high school, hanging out with a friend, and he was like, "Hey, I really like D&D. Do you want to like just play?" And so we like made a character, and I had I'd never even heard of it up to that point.
Yeah.
Like all the way into high school, I never heard of D&D, which seems weird, but I really liked it. Like we just did a little one thing, and I was like, "Whoa, I want to run on the wall and then jump off and stab this guy," Just
yeah.
Because at the time I was like, I can do anything that's ridiculous. Okay, like roll it, and it's like success. Okay, cool. Like it was a good first impression of it, but then I didn't know anybody else who played it after, so it's like that was it for several years. I know.
Yeah, my introduction to role-playing games. I played one session of D&D with some friends, and then we immediately decided that we were going to, instead of playing D&D, play the West End Games edition of Star Wars. And that, to me, is still my favorite RPG. We played that for a very long time. I loved it. I think it's quick and easy, and it's a great game. I love it.
That's cool. I think I remember that one, maybe.
It was all D6. The whole thing. And so before I even had like your sort of standard set of nerd dice, I just had a ton of D6. I remember rating. We had like a game closet, of course, in my house. I was like rating Monopoly and Yahtzee for as many D6 as I could get.
Funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have a go-to character?
Oh, in the Star Wars game?
Yeah.
We played the same campaign for a while. So, of course, I was a Jedi. Or like I think they called the template was like Young Jedi. So you were essentially like Luke.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, his name was Mordred Craven, which I only realized later was like a bad combination of, because Mordred is an evil character from Arthurian legend, and Craven means cowardly, and I didn't know that at the time. I was like, these words sound cool together. Let's do that.
It sounded cool to me. I was like, yeah. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, so I enjoyed that. That was a good time.
That is funny. Well, you started a group on Discord that's dedicated to playing really heavyweight games.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I love that group. I wish that the only reason I'm not still in that group actively is because I'm riding my bike across the country, visiting all these cool game design people. But yeah, so around, it was like November of last year, I started to notice that there was not really a space for the heavier games, or really the longer games that were being playtested in sort of the various Discord communities. And there was a space on the Seattle game design server that was kind of dedicated to heavy games, but it was pretty inactive. And but what was great about it was there were already some people there talking about, hey, maybe we should start a group specifically for this. So that was Ashwin Kamek and Bryn Smith were sort of talking about, hey, we should start a group. So I reached out to them because I had already made a Discord, and I was like ready to invite people. I was like, let's just do this. And they talked me off the ledge very wisely. They were like, okay, this sounds great. We're excited that you're excited, but we need like a plan in place of how that's going to work. So we had kind of regular meetings with the three of us over the course of the next month and a half or so, making sure we had a code of conduct in place, making sure we had systems in place for how games were going to get tested and whose turn it was going to be. Because it's one thing to show up with your 30-minute card game and maybe it doesn't get tested that week. But it's pretty rough if you show up with your once a month chance to play your giant epic 4X game, and there's just no system to tell you when you're going to get tested. We spent a lot of time designing around that and figuring out, how we were going to kind of spread the word and what the requirements were going to be for actually, like, what was the floor going to be. So we ultimately decided, okay, if your game takes 90 minutes or longer to play, then this is the place for you. We didn't really have any requirements outside of that, other than we did ask that you not just kind of bring, like, this is the first time this has ever been played, because we were asking people to block off a significant amount of time.
You didn't want to break it too early.
Right.
Like 10 minutes in, okay, well, I know what I need now.
Right. And that group has done really well because there wasn't a space for that. And so we kind of just found a niche to, for people to play their longer games. And this isn't to say that, like I've said this before, I don't necessarily think that you need to play your game to completion every time you play test it. I actually think that's like a bad habit to get into.
Yeah.
But there are times where you just need more time. And so that was kind of the idea behind this group.
That's really cool. And that was actually my very first introduction to you, kind of. And I didn't really realize it, but I joined it and kept thinking, like, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to get into this because I want to play these heavy games, but I could never block off enough time for it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm still
originally,
there.
as you should be. Yeah. Originally, the format was you had to kind of block off a day of 7 hours to play test. You'd be put into a group and you'd play test 2 games. They have since changed that so that you really only have to sign up for 1 game. So the time commitment is a bit less now, which I think works for a lot more people and is more flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to hit it back up.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of the other thing that's fun about it is we made it like thematically entertaining. So the whole heavyweight championship playtesting, the name is also like a kind of a professional wrestling shtick. So we pass out server roles that are belts. If if someone has contributed a lot to the server, then they are the heavyweight championship like belt holder. They are the champion of the server, and they get recognized in that way. And it's just a fun way to sort of recognize that people in the community are awesome, and they're all willing to help people. And I love that about this community.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that when I was there. I'm not a big wrestler, but I've liked seeing like I think you would highlight like on Sunday or something. Yep. Once a week, you would highlight the belt.
Yeah,
the champion.
Yeah, it's just like a little pat on the back to say, hey, thanks for being here and doing cool stuff.
Yeah. From there, you were on Mike Tanner's podcast. That's Barely a Game.
Yes.
And we're in that server as well together.
Yes, we are.
But we didn't really interact all that much.
No. So I think really how I found out who you were was because Mike had mentioned that you were on his podcast and then he was on your podcast. And so I listened to both of those. I was like, oh, this is cool. And that's how I discovered your podcast.
Yes.
So it's fun. That's part of the interconnectedness of what we all do. Yeah. I was on Mike's podcast, and therefore I heard about you and your podcast and started listening to it.
Yeah.
And discovered that what you do is really cool.
Well, thank you.
And so I like set a bunch of fires in the Northwest so that I would purposely have to come to Salt Lake City. That's how this went down. I did it without even being there. I'm a genius.
Telekinesis or pyrokinesis.
Pyrokinesis, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, I'm glad you made it. It totally worth all the smoke.
Ah, man.
You know how to make an entrance.
I guess so. Most of my entrances are very sweaty. And out of breath and like, please can I have water and a shower? That's usually how that goes down.
I can see that. I could see you arriving at Rob's just like
I was like, I'm pretty sure the first thing I asked for was a shower, and then can I do laundry? Because I hadn't done laundry in literally hundreds of miles, and I'm a gross man. Yeah. Well, I mean, so one of the things about riding your bike across the country is you travel light. I have a set of riding clothes, and I have 2 sets of clothes that I just like wear, and that's the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
This is freshly laundered, so I hope that I don't smell that.
You look clean.
Look at me.
You look clean.
Probably for the first time in like a month, I probably look clean.
I couldn't smell you in the car. I don't smell you now.
That's awesome.
So
I'm excited. And it's bad when you smell yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is the worst. I'm actually really curious. We're going to jump back to the bike. Wait, no. Let's continue.
We're going to go all over the place.
Yeah, we're going to go all over the place. Who cares?
I assume your listeners don't care about any cohesive thought.
I think so. Well, I did get a 2-star review, so
that was probably it.
That's probably
2 stars. Couldn't follow.
Yeah,
crazy people. Doesn't wash his clothes.
Like, how do you handle food? Well, like all of that. Like, I just can't even imagine.
I mean, I went all out with the best intentions. And it's funny, I remember before I went on this trip, I watched a lot of videos and did a lot of reading from people that have done this before. And they always circled back to the same thing, which is it's really hard to regulate your diet or whatever. When you're on the road, you'll inevitably just end up eating at gas stations because that's what's available. And so I do a lot of that. And because, I mean, I'll ride for 50 miles and the only thing that's there is some kind of like Sinclair dinosaur gas station. I think which we don't have on the East Coast, so I think it's hilarious that I ride up to a gas station, there's a plastic dinosaur outside of it. I'm like, all right, this is great. On those days, I pack up with a lot of like Kind bars. If I ever find like a grocery store of any kind, it's like a mecca of, hey, can I get some vegetables or fruit? I eat at Subway a lot, again, because they're a reliable source of vegetables. I can put a bunch of veggies on my cold cut sandwich or whatever, and I can have those. If I find a banana, it's like striking gold. So a lot of that. And then, I mean, when I get to more populated areas, I eat out a lot. I can't cook anywhere. I mean, there are some people that do this and they camp a lot and they bring a camping stove, and so they like prepare meals, but I'm lazy.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
What a jerk.
I didn't want to carry all that stuff.
No, that makes sense. That's why I was curious, because it's like food can be a lot of weight, and then you've got like garbage to deal with, and
yeah. So mostly just stop at places, hoping that they have something remotely healthy and accepting often that they don't.
Yeah.
My diet restrictions are essentially, I think I told you this the other night. I owe my brother $1,000 if I drink soda at all. And that's just a personal thing that I've been doing for almost a year now because I'm addicted to soda in a bad way. Like I get the shakes and withdrawals and all that stuff. It took me a while to break that habit. But I also owe him $1,000 if I eat pizza or chips or like Doritos by myself. I can have those things socially because I knew I was going to be going to game nights and I was going to be offered this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm going to eat it because it's there. But yeah, so I don't like the various Little Caesars and Domino's that I see along the way. I don't stop there.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because I really don't want to eat that stuff anyway.
Yeah. And it's not like you're going to just you're not going to ride 50 miles and then the only place is a Pizza Hut, like.
Right.
You're going to hit a gas station.
There'll be something else. I've eaten a lot more burgers on this trip, partially because they're just readily available in America. But also, I don't know. Like, I'm not usually a red meat guy, but something about this trip has awoken the carnivore in me or something. I need it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I just love burgers in general. That's like one of my favorites. We're going to go to Thai after this.
I'm excited.
Yeah, taking you to my favorite Thai place. Let's go.
I mean, not right now. Soon.
We'll continue this interview in an hour. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So I did a podcast with Mary Cousin, who is a phenomenal woman who lives in Chicago and is essentially the social nexus of the board and toy universe.
Huh. I didn't know this.
She's phenomenal.
What's it called?
Her name is Mary Cousin.
Yeah.
And she runs the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, and she runs a collective of people called People of Play, which is kind of just like treating game designers as if they are the authors and filmmakers and artists that we should recognize them as. And the reason I bring this up is because I was doing like a podcast with her for the board game workshop, which will hopefully come out soon. And in the middle of that, she had ordered one of the famous Chicago deep dish pizzas for us to have together. And so we did actually interrupt the podcast to have pizza.
That's funny.
It was fun.
So you're doing that for the board game workshop?
Yeah, Chris Anderson, who runs that, does like a little thing where you can be a guest contributor.
Yeah.
And I had sort of thrown around some ideas about maybe doing podcasty type things as I did the bike trip, but I didn't really have a cohesive plan around that. So he was just like, hey, if you want to record a couple episodes and send them to me, I'll put them up. And that's what ended up happening.
Oh, cool. Have they come out yet?
One has. So I got a chance to interview Jennifer Bartlett, who is a librarian. She's a head of reference at the Manchester Public Library, and she runs this amazing program. Her library has over 500 board games that are actually in circulation. You can go and check out a board game and bring it home. And she does a lot of things with the board game community there. And she'll have local designers come in and showcase their work and prototyping stuff.
That's so cool. She's on Twitter, right?
I think her handle is Board Game Librarian.
That's what it is.
And I think she's affiliated with the Dice Tower. I think she does some stuff for that. Her and her husband also do some kind of book review thing. I forget exactly, but she has a YouTube channel.
Okay.
She does a ton of cool stuff. Just a great, wonderful person.
She's somebody I was going to reach out to have on the show.
Oh yeah, you totally should. She's great.
No. Just go listen on the Board Game Workshop.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that is the next place I knew you from. Was just you were on an episode of. Have you been on more than that? Yeah, anyway,
the Board Game
Workshop. Yeah.
Oh, where we talked about meaning in games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of my big things. I think games are art, and we should talk about them like art. Not to ruin anyone's experience with games, but just because some of us like to delve deeper into what does that game mean in much the way that you might do in a high school English class.
Yeah.
What are the deeper meanings behind To Kill a Mockingbird or Beloved or any of those great books? And so I think it's fun to do that with games.
Well, they're works of art.
Absolutely.
I thought it was really cool. I thought you brought up some good points on there, and
thanks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. That was the first board game podcast I listened to. So when I would go out working, I would just listen to that backlog
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris is great.
There's like 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great podcast. If you totally check that out.
I agree.
Yeah. And Dustin, who's like the co-host from time to time. I think he's supposed to be like a co-host, but he just comes and goes as he can. He's really, really busy, but he's the one that kind of pushed me into podcasting too.
Cool.
So little tie-in there.
Yeah.
One day I'll have Chris on, maybe.
Oh, I'm sure he'd be down.
Yeah. He's a cool guy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So how many average miles do you go a day? I know that kind of changed at one point.
It did, yeah. So at first, I had the whole trip planned out that it would be roughly 50 miles a day. Not every day, though. I built in about 20 rest days. And then once the trip changed, I was still... I sort of publicly said, I'm not going to try to get the PAX on time. But in my heart, I was trying to get the PAX on time. And so I had some really grueling days. I did a 131-mile day and then a 135-mile day. Those actually weren't the hardest. The hardest day was like a 95-mile day, except it was in rolling hills in Nebraska in about 100-degree weather.
Oh,
so that day around 5 o'clock in the evening, when it was at its hottest, I actually was getting dizzy and pulled over and like sat in a shaded ditch for like 45 minutes. And I was really grateful that there was a farm nearby that would let me fill up my water bottles so I could actually get to where I was going, because I was not feeling good that day.
That is wild.
That was a little scary. There have been a few times on the trip where I'm like, do I need to call for help? That was probably the worst one, outside of being on top of the mountain and like frantically waving for help, but like where I was actually contemplating pulling my phone out, actually calling for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the worst of those situations. So when I left Fargo and finally made the decision to head to Denver from Fargo, I think I averaged about 80 miles a day. And the very last day was really hard because that was the 135 miles. It took me about 18 hours because I got 3 flat tires. And I got my last flat tire after midnight. I was like 6 miles away from where I was staying in Denver. I got a flat tire after midnight, and I just threw my hands in the air and I called an Uber. I'm like, yep, I'm done.
Oh,
I can't do this. I was so broken at that point, and I was starving. I think my last meal had been 6 hours before that. And like when you, like 6 hours in real time is fine, but 6 hours after continuing to bike is just brutal.
Oh, man, that is wild.
It was fun.
I guess not being a bicyclist, if you get a flat tire, do you just patch it normally, or do you have to do you have spare tire stuff on you? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so part of the reason I was at the end of the rope is I had already patched the tire that popped, and I was just I wasn't out of stuff. I could have patched it if I wanted to, but I was just kind of broken. For most of the trip, I carried 1 extra inner tube with me, and so if something happened, I replaced the tube and then just got to where I was going and bought another tube. Once I made the detour and really, on the western side of the Mississippi, there's just a lot more space between services and towns and places that even have inner tubes. A lot of towns don't just have like a bike shop, at least not where I was in South Dakota and Nebraska and going into Colorado. The great thing about the trip on the eastern side of the Mississippi is a lot of it was on established bike trails that, especially the Midwest, the upper Midwest is just littered with old railroad lines that they repurposed into bicycle recreational trails. And so there are tons of bike shops along those trails because people use them all the time. So whenever I got into trouble, the next town, even if it was only a town of 400 people or so, had a bike shop. So that wasn't really an issue. But once I got into the Nebraska area and the goat head thorns, if you don't know what those are, they're like nature's caltrops. They just continued to puncture my tires. So on the Denver day, I had 3 flats. So one of them, I replaced the inner tube, and then the next flat I patched that same tube. And then by the time I got to the 3rd flat, and it was after midnight, I was just done patching or replacing anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've gotten pretty good at it. It takes me about a half hour, I guess, to change the tire. It can be tough because to get the tire on and off the actual wheel, you need like the special tools like levers to get it off.
Yeah.
It can be tricky. Yeah.
I could see why you would call it 6 miles away. It's just
so exhausted.
Not worth the half hour.
I'd been riding since about 6 in the morning and it was midnight. Oh, I was like, yep, I'm done.
Yeah, that is so crazy. And along your trip, you've been doing a blog post a little bit every so often.
Yeah,
I think some really, really good stuff about playtesting.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I started doing that when I started to slow down a bit on the trip.
I feel like you could write a playtest Bible. Because like some of that advice in there is stuff I've never heard.
Like what?
There was, tell me what I did well.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, there was one part that was just like, stop apologizing for playtesting your game.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, if somebody's playtesting your game, they're here to playtest it. Like, they know what they're getting into.
Definitely.
You know, wherever it is on that stage, you don't need to apologize for it. Like, you're in the creative process.
Yeah. So that I think goes to a lot of my philosophy around just creativity in general and about what we all do together. We're all here to support each other. I'm playtesting your game because I want to do that. And I think it's fun and I'm excited for your game and I want you to have my feedback.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. What you do with that feedback is totally up to you. I have no expectations around, are you going to listen to my feedback? Do you care what I have to say? That's up to you because you're the creator in that situation and you're just sort of asking for other people's thoughts about how they experience that. And I don't think any of us should apologize for that or feel bad about that. And I know that we do. I mean, I do. I'm nervous sometimes, especially if I don't know people. Breaking out a game, and I'm like, man, I hope this doesn't suck.
Yeah.
But I would like us all to get over that. I would like us all to recognize that we are in a supportive community that wants us to learn from the experience. I mean, everyone's going to bring a bad game.
Yeah.
Even the best designers. We don't see, we see the end product. We don't see all the little mess ups in between or what it looked like, 12 iterations ago, because those were learning experiences. It's very much like how you approach teaching. You want kids to make mistakes so that they can learn from them. And that's really hard with teenagers because they don't want to make any mistakes. Showing weakness is awful.
Yeah. You're already so insecure.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole... I, a lot of times, relate game design to just the writing process. And a big part of the writing process is just getting a draft done. And you shouldn't apologize for the draft. The draft has a very specific purpose, to get your thoughts out onto a piece of paper. So that prototype you have is your thoughts out on a piece of paper. You can do the editing and revising later.
Yeah.
Once you have it all on the paper and you show it to someone, you get their feedback, and then you go back and you make a new iteration. But there's no reason to apologize for any part of that.
Yeah.
That's just how creativity works.
There was another thing on there that I absolutely loved, and it was fun to read because I read it after we play tested.
Okay.
Because I didn't know about it, but Rob brought it up, and I was like, "What?" And like I went onto your website, and I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I like read all of them, and so it was just really cool. But you write your feedback down during the playtest, and I thought that was really cool. And I didn't necessarily understand at the time we were doing it.
Okay.
But reading why, I was like, oh, now I feel like that's really good. I'll let you say why.
Yeah, so you're probably talking about at some point during the playtest, Rob, I think, apologized for giving feedback during the playtest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like, it's not like he sat down and stopped the game for 10 minutes so he could pontificate for a while. Like, that's definitely not what happened. It was it was a quick thought and we moved on, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one of the things I do during playtesting is I write down my thoughts when I'm playtesting someone else's game. I'm writing down my thoughts as I have them. And I'm saving all that for the very end of the playtest because I don't want to interrupt the playtest, because I think a big part of playtesting is experiencing the game. And as soon as someone starts giving feedback, we're no longer experiencing the game. We are experiencing feedback. And it can be very difficult to kind of go and sift through, well, did my feelings of frustration come from like the game being too long because the game was actually too long, or did we just spend too much time talking about it? And so that's like a big reason of why I ask people to hold their feedback to the end of the playtest. And then for me, from like a designer's perspective, when I'm playtesting someone else's game, that's a chance to get better as a designer. And so something that I've learned, at least about myself, is to be as in touch with my feelings about the game as possible throughout the course of the entire playtest. Because at the beginning of a game, I might be super excited about something. And I'm going to write down, I'm very excited to try this. And then as we play the game, we'll see, did that part work? Was at any point in the game like doing that action an attractive idea? Like, was it the right thing to do? And then a lot of other times I'll be sitting down to a game and I'll be like, I don't think this is going to work. And I'll write that down. Be like, my first impression of this is I don't think this is going to go anywhere. And then it ends up being my favorite part of the game. And so instead of interrupting the playtest to be like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, just let it play out and see how your feelings evolve and change. It can also be, I think, useful. I like to hear the kind of feedback of when you were explaining this game, I didn't think this part was going to be good, but then it was awesome. Because that tells me as a designer, am I pitching this wrong? Am I not focusing on the right part? Am I explaining this correctly or not? And then maybe I can change that for the next time. And then maybe I'll stop getting that kind of feedback. Maybe the part of the game I want to shine will shine from beginning to end and it'll hook people in. So that's a big part of why I take notes.
That's really interesting. I love the whole thing. And it almost has, like, depending on the stages, like with my game, we did little teeny things where it was like, oh, you know what? That system's broken already. I can see that. Like,
oh yeah,
this isn't going to work. Or okay, we're going to need to change that. And some of them we changed and then implemented it for the whole thing. And some I was just like, we're just going to leave it broken and I'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
But those were like 10-second comments.
Well, and I mean, that was you as the designer making those things. So
yes.
Something else that's important to me is that designers should feel empowered to change things on the fly in their playtest.
Yeah, I mean, that was in there too.
Yeah, there's no reason that you should be locked in. I mean, you have like, let's say you go to a group and you have a 60-minute block. Well, if you know something's going wrong in the first 10 minutes, you're the designer. Just change it. We can restart, and then you have 50 minutes to do something else.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with trying a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the creative process. We try something, we see if it works, and if it doesn't, we change it.
Yeah, that was my second in-person playtest, by the way, ever.
Ever?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
You've been doing a lot of TTS.
I've only done 2 playtests on TTS of the same game, and then my other in-person was a different game. That was like, I was very. That one was like I apologized the whole time, unfortunately, because I was just like, this feels more like an activity. It doesn't feel like a game. And then when we played it, it was like, this is way better than I expected.
Hey, that's cool though.
It was nice, yeah, but I had a lot of things to work out. Anyways. So I love all of those things. There's way more on there. There's not even that many posts, but there's like a lot of good content in it, and I feel like you could keep going on some of them.
So I think the one you're talking about, so the one you're talking about is like my top 10 or whatever favorite playtesting guidelines.
But you dive into them in other ones posts too, I think.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. As the weeks go on, I'll sort of expand upon my rationale as to why I think those things are great. And something else I'm doing that I sort of just started doing when I crossed the Colorado border, I kind of had this idea. I'm stopping at what I think are cool places. So a state border is a cool place to me, as long as it has a cool sign that says welcome to whatever the state is. And then I went up to the Salt Lake yesterday and I recorded a video. So I'm recording videos kind of about these playtesting guidelines. So I'm going to, it'll be fun to be like, hey, I'm talking about this random thing at Salt Lake. And it's nothing really to do with Salt Lake.
Yeah.
But it's about design stuff. And they'll be quick little videos.
That's really cool. I love that.
I think it's fun. It's a cool way to tie the biking and the design together, which I think I was having a hard time mentally. Like how do I make content? Because I know people that ride across the country and make content about bike riding, they have a very specific kind of video where it's really about the nature and about the journey.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but that's not who I am. It's I definitely record and take pictures of the journey. But that's not what I'm passionate about making is travel videos or whatever. That's not
you're not gonna, the crowd that would attract isn't necessarily the crowd you want.
Yeah,
kind of. I mean, you want
I like those people. I think they're great. But I'm more into the game design stuff. So to meld those two things, when I find a cool spot, I'm like, hey, I should make a video here about playtesting stuff.
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing.
Very cool. Oh, that's exciting. I'm excited to see it.
So no Bible necessarily, but a video series.
Yeah.
Assuming my video doesn't get corrupted. I've been spending a lot of time backing up my video.
Oh, good.
The last few weeks, yeah.
That's huge. Or you're biking, so something could happen to your...
I am constantly paranoid about my little case of SD cards getting stolen or just lost.
Oh, that would be horrifying.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Big time. Thanks.
What do you do outside of board games and biking?
Yeah. That's a great question. Where do I start? I think talk about music.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that outside of this.
Yeah. So
it's weird to know somebody a little more.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
You usually just do these really cold, and you're like, I kind of know you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's see. I love music. I've loved music for a long time. I was in a band with my two brothers. I have two brothers and two sisters, and my two brothers are all my siblings are younger than me, but my brothers and I formed a band. Can I say the name of the band on this podcast? It's like sweary, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Edit. If you don't want to hear it, skip forward 15 seconds from right now. Or, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, skip forward.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Anyway, the band was called the Bitchin' Aardvarks, which, it's not very offensive, but some people.
Yeah.
It was offensive enough that we had to change the name to just the Aardvarks a few times when we played at, school functions or something.
Okay, nice.
Or, I think we did a couple, town shows in our small conservative town, so we had to do that.
Oh, I actually don't know the answer to this question. Did you play covers, or did you guys write your own music?
Oh, we totally wrote our own music.
Nice!
I think we occasionally played a few covers, we covered Don't Stop Believin', and we covered, not even the whole song, it was just an intro to something else.
Oh, okay.
We covered a couple of Blink-182 songs. It was a punk band, in case you haven't got that. We really wanted to be a ska band, but we didn't have any horns. Our big local hit was called Scarlet Fever, and my brother wrote it, and it was all about how we love ska music. So, yeah, it was great. I love playing music. So the way we approach that, I think, is sort of another way I philosophically approach creativity. We didn't have any set roles. It was whoever wrote the song would play guitar and sing for it, and then everyone else had to rotate around that person. So I played guitar, bass, and drums. I was definitely the worst of the drummers in the group. I played drums for exactly one song. So mostly I did guitar and bass. Music was fun. We did it for 4 years. We did a Kickstarter for an album, which was great. Really fun.
Did it fund?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we have one album out in the universe. It's called Lottery Winner. It's got 20 songs on it because that's how we roll.
Nice.
Yeah. It was a really good time. We mostly played in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, so Providence and Boston, and we did a little upstate New York stuff. That's as far as we went. We're on commercial radio out there. There was a Brown University runs a commercial radio station. It has since gone off the air. It's still on the internet, I guess, but radio is essentially dead now. But they had a rock hunt thing, and so for 2 years in a row, we were voted in by the fans to participate in this thing, and it was really fun. Yeah, so that's my brief touch with fame of any variety.
That's really awesome.
It was a ton of fun. And what was really cool was getting to bond with my brothers in a very different way, and sort of seeing their personalities come out. Because at the time we made the band, I was in my late 20s, and my youngest brother was still 16? He was 16 or 17. And so for a while, we were playing at bars where he technically couldn't get in. So that was fun. And then my middle brother was 3 or 4 years older than him. So in that age range.
Yeah.
So getting to see them sort of become adults through this process and express themselves. Because we all wrote songs, we had a different approach to writing songs.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was really great. I come from sort of the punk background of I like that punk can be humorous, and I also like that punk can be political. So while I don't really engage anymore so much with political discourse on social media, because I think that's a terrible place to have discussions about politics, I absolutely did so in my songs.
Oh, nice.
That was where, so songs to me are just a wonderful way to capture the emotional content of how I feel about the world. And so that's what I did. So one of my favorite songs that I wrote was called Start a Riot. And it was, so I don't know how much you remember the 2012 election cycle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But during 2012, we had all these great sound bites coming out of the Republican Party. One that I remember very distinctly was from Rush Limbaugh, where he was talking about tying contraception to healthcare and how this offended him greatly, apparently. And he called some woman a slut because she wanted to be paid to have sex. It was like his take on this. Do you remember this quote?
No.
So this quote it starts the song off because I was so angry about it.
Wow.
And then immediately following that quote was another quote by, I can't even remember his name, some senator or representative from somewhere in I want to say Nebraska or Missouri or something, where he said that if a woman gets raped, her body shuts down pregnancy. Those are not the exact words. But
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that one.
And so the whole song, Starter by It, was about how angry I wanted to see people get about this. I was like, why are we not burning things to the ground because of these statements? And so I wrote a song about that, and here we are 9 years later, and Texas is in the 1950s.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And it's like, hey, let's burn some shit down, guys. And so I love music because it can capture that rage, and I think the song does it pretty well.
Yeah. Nice.
So that was my approach. The songs that I wrote on the album were either funny or they were political in nature.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my shtick.
So when I listen to it, I'll hear it.
I think you'll know that one for sure because it starts off with Rush Limbaugh, and it's pretty obvious.
Is it an actual
very angry song? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I guess the legality is something like you can use 6 seconds of someone else's sound without having to do anything.
Nice.
Yeah. So we kept those under 6 seconds. Yeah. And I think actually with that clip, because it was a public news thing, I think we could have used as much as we wanted.
Oh, that's true, huh?
Yeah. Public figure stuff. Yeah. If you listen to my music and figure out which songs I wrote, you'll see economic rage and social injustice rage. You'll see a lot of that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And you'll also see sophomoric songs about, the first song I ever wrote was called She Ain't Got No Teeth, But I Don't Care, which sounds really bad, but it's actually, so it's supposed to make you initially think, oh, this is going to be super gross. But it's actually about an old couple who have grown old together and they still love each other and they don't care that they're senile or falling down or falling apart. Yeah, thank you.
I love it. I was mini clapping. That's why you said thank you. That's really, really cool. What else?
Outside of music?
Outside of music, yeah.
Let's see.
Do you get to play anything anymore?
So the band, we don't really play anymore because, we all kind of grew up and got jobs and got busy with life. And, one of my brothers lives in California, so it's really hard for us to get together from the East Coast to the West Coast. I still definitely write songs, privately. I have a guitar. It's tough for me to play because I have, some arthritis in my hand. I told you about that a little bit earlier. And so I never know if I play a guitar this week, am I going to be in pain for the next 3 weeks, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
well, you still play on occasion. It's still
fun. I still play on occasion. I still write music. It would be nice to, one day revisit that because it's a ton of fun. If you've never played on stage, I just recommend it. It's so much fun.
I used to throw up before we went on stage every single time. I never, ever got used to it. But when I was up there, I interact with the crowd. I get all excited and jump around and play and you wouldn't think I was nervous, but beforehand, I would, without a doubt, every single time.
I absolutely feel you. I don't think I ever threw up, but I was definitely nervous every time. But as soon as I started playing, it was all right, it's party.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very good times.
It's you're in your element. You know what you're doing, and you just have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, other fun stuff I do. During the pandemic, I got into, so I decided I was going to learn some new skills during the pandemic. And
as we all did. Did you stick to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, a few of them. Yeah. So I wanted to learn video editing. And so now I'm sort of using that on the bike trip.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did, and will eventually revisit in some capacity, if only because my family demands I do this, is so my dad and brother, who lives in Rhode Island, are into golf. And so I'm into golf, sort of, but not as much as them. But so like for me to find a way to have fun doing that, I had to do something goofy. So what I did was I only played with yellow golf balls and I drew faces on them. And I called every single golf ball Larry. And so I started making a video series about these bad Larrys. And it was just a fun way for me to have fun with my dad and my brother and go out and play golf and also catalog the lives of the Larrys, because I would give them all personalities. So like Larry 4 was a womanizer. I caught him in my bed one day with a bunch of pink golf balls. And then there was an evil Larry at some point who tried to capture me and duct taped my mouth shut and a bunch of weird things. So that's one of the things I'm into is I guess comedy in some way. I don't know what it was. It turned into really, honestly, what it was me dealing with all the mental health problems of the pandemic. I needed something to do, and the very last episode of the series has some heartfelt moments where I say goodbye to the last Larry. And thank all the Larrys for sort of getting me through 2020 by giving me like a hobby and something to do. So I do that. I had a lot of fun doing that. I haven't done this in a while, but it's another thing I want to revisit. It was my way of learning how to make a website using Squarespace. I have a different blog that has nothing to do with game design or riding my bike, and it is called There Is No Good Boy. And this comes. Did I tell you about this?
Yeah.
I will definitely talk about it more.
I think Rob brought it up. Or you? No, I think you brought it. Anyway,
someone said it. Maybe Tessa brought up that I had a dog blog.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
So anyway, I have this blog called There Is No Good Boy, and it came about because my sister, we have a sibling group chat, and my sister sent a picture of her golden retriever with just the most confused look on his face, like. And we all sort of, as siblings, went through and captioned the photo in some way. So some of us were like, oh, no, I left the oven on. Or like, oh, I think those puppies are mine. Or like from Home Alone, Kevin. And my contribution to this was, what if there is no good boy? Because it looked like he'd just had the most life-changing realization of his life. And so from this, I decided that dogs have a secret religion about the good boy, who is essentially like dog Jesus. But like all the biblical figures wrapped up into one. And so the blog it's like a mix of, from the point of view of dogs, questioning dog Jesus, like whether or not it exists, and being like, did humans make up the good boy as a way to control us and stop us from peeing on the carpet? To just like a bunch of parodies of biblical stories starring the good boy. So one of my favorite ones, I have so many favorite ones. So one of the ones I wrote about is about the Tower of Babel. And so it was the Tower of Breeds in my version of this. And so what happened was there was, the first human village that had all the dogs there, and the good boy was off doing something else, and so couldn't intervene when a bunch of squirrels invaded. And the squirrels, of course, antagonized the dogs. They would pull their tails and they would steal from the trash. And one day the dogs just had enough of this, and they chased the squirrels, and all the squirrels went up this giant tree in the center of the town. And when the squirrels realized that dogs could not climb trees, they began to mock them. And so the dogs, again, without the good boy there to guide them properly, decided they were going to gather all of their feeding bowls together and make a giant tower so that they could climb up the tree and get to the squirrels. The dogs started to do this, and just as the dogs got close enough to the top where they could get the squirrels launched their surprise attack of a bunch of acorns at the dogs. And so the dogs freaked out, and unfortunately this unsettled the whole tower, and the bowls started going everywhere, and it fell and it crashed and destroyed a bunch of human houses. And so finally the humans were fed up. They were like, dogs can't all live in the same place, and a bunch of them picked up and moved to far away places in the world. And some of these dogs that moved to different places started to have different hair color and different sizes, and that's how we got different dog breeds. So
genius.
Thank you. There is no good boy. So I enjoy creative writing. I guess that's sort of like a more broad view of hobbies, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's one of the goofy things that I do.
I was going to say that, like, you've talked about writing throughout this.
It's true.
I think, in different degrees. Mm-hmm. So writing seems like something you love.
Yeah. Once upon a time, I ran away from everything and wrote a novel and never got it published.
Do you still have it?
I do. It's not good. I think everyone's first novel is bad. Let's see. I was dealing with a bad breakup. Not bad. I was dealing with a serious breakup. It was probably my first really serious relationship where I was like deeply in love, and it lasted like a couple of years. It was like my last college relationship. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a book in the form of like IMs and emails and like a shared notebook that this couple passed back and forth between them. So it's a book about a relationship, and the way the relationship is told is through how they communicated with each other.
Oh, cool.
Which, it was a cool gimmick.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I got to the point where I was pitching to some agents, and a few of them read it and didn't go anywhere from there because it wasn't very good.
The idea is very novel.
The idea was cool. Yeah. And it was like emotionally good for me to get it all out and do that. But yeah, so like, yeah, I enjoy creative writing. I have a hard time concentrating on it. It's really tough to sit down for X amount of time and just write.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always struggling with that inner editor. It's hard to turn that person off and be like, no, it's fine. Just get the draft out. We kind of talked about that. I thought that's important to me.
Yeah.
And it's important to me because I struggle with it. Yeah. So I definitely, I've submitted some like short stories to one of my favorite literary publications. Is called The First Line. And it's kind of like what it sounds like. Their writing prompt is the first line of the story that you have to write, and you submit those stories. So it could be, I think the first line I remember is something like, you know, Calvin was surprised when he walked into the room to find blank. And so you fill in the blank and then you write a short story with that sentence.
Interesting.
And then the publication probably, I think they published like 8 or 9 of the stories in their little magazine, and they all start with that same thing. And it's really interesting to see where different people went with that. So I submitted to that, and then when I was a teacher, I encouraged students to submit to that. Like I ran like a creative writing club, and I had some students submit to this publication, and they got really good feedback, which was nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that was fun. So yeah, passionate about writing and just creativity in general. Maybe.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, creating music, creating writing, creating videos, creating board games.
Board games, yeah.
It all ties together.
Absolutely.
I got that same... I feel you on so many of these things.
Thanks.
Like I create music. I used to write. Every once in a while I still try and dabble in it, but nah, I've never gotten as far as you have.
Well, I wish I could say I got further.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Do you play video games?
Not as much as I used to.
Okay.
As a kid growing up, I played a ton of video games. They were my thing. Absolutely. I still sometimes cry listening to the Final Fantasy VI soundtrack because it's just so good.
Nice.
Yeah, love that. I played a ton of Counter-Strike, like decades worth of Counter-Strike at this point, because it was in beta my freshman year in college, and the whole game just blew my mind.
Counter-Strike was amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Modern stuff, I play... Rob and I actually played Rocket League the other day, because Rocket League is one of my favorite games of all time.
Oh, nice.
Phenomenal. I love that game. I don't play very often, but I love it. I sort of had it on like my list of things to do during the pandemic, was to sort of knock off some RPGs that I hadn't played or gotten to. Like I bought Pillars of Eternity like 4 years ago and hadn't played it, so I played that during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I think my problem with RPGs, I want to like them, but I think their flaw is that, especially in a game like Pillars of Eternity, the main quest just feels like it's so pressing. Like, if I'm acting as my character in the game would act, I should only be doing the main quest because it is clearly the most important thing. And so when they throw the side quest at you of like, hey, go rescue someone's dog, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. My life is literally hanging in the balance right now. And then I get to the end of the game and I find out I don't have enough levels because I haven't done enough side quests, and I get rolled, and I'm like, okay, well, this is frustrating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I totally get that.
So I think that's why I tend not to play video games as much anymore. And it's why I gravitate towards games like Rocket League, Counter-Strike, Because they're like those quick little rounds. You just play for a while.
Yeah.
And like the story isn't.
Yeah, I totally get that. I recently played both of the Spider-Man games on the PlayStation, and I like how they handled the side quests. Like, I'm a side quest junkie. I do them all. And I shouldn't. But I should just stick to the story sometimes because there's so many games I've never finished the main game. The Spider-Man one, you'll do a certain amount of story, and then it'll be like, I'm waiting on somebody. Like, let's patrol the city. Like, I need to patrol the city while I wait. And so then you go and do the side quests. So like it designates a time to go like power up, level up that way.
That's cool.
So I kind of liked that. You know, like it makes it still fit in narratively where you're not like, oh yeah, Doc Ock's gonna crush the city or whatever. No spoilers there. I'm just throwing out a villain there. But yeah, like, well, yeah, I could do that, but I could go catch pigeons too. So I'm going to go do that, and then he'll wait.
Right.
Yeah. I get that. Oh, there was another one that sort of, you know your hobbies, if there's another one.
Let's see, other stuff I do. I love tennis. So I coached, I think I mentioned this when I was talking about teaching, but I coached track and tennis because I love both of those things. I did not do those things in high school. I developed my love for these things as an adult. I mean, I played tennis in high school, but not on a team. It was just like something I did with my friends. And actually, when I was in high school, I thought running was pointless. It wasn't until I was like early 20s where I was like, running's a nice stress relief. So I got into that, and then I did some obstacle course races. I like Spartan races. I haven't done one in a few years, but I do enjoy them.
Wow.
Yeah, those are fun. And I really like, so again, coming back to community and camaraderie, like if you do one of these Spartan races, if you don't do the competitive one, there's definitely like a time slot that's like we're competing against each other. But if you go at any other time, people are so helpful. I've had many people sort of just help me over an obstacle and then like I repay that favor to someone else. And it's really fun and rewarding.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a good community. And tennis is great. I got into tennis. I mean, I've always loved tennis, but I started coaching it because at the high school I was teaching at, basically we had enough track coaches and not enough tennis coaches. And the athletic director came to me and she was like, Phil, I know you play tennis. Can you coach tennis? Because if you don't, the girls are not going to have a season. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do that.
Well, when you put it like that.
Yeah, when you put it like that, I guess I care. So I will do it. And what I ended up doing, it was great. It was actually really good for me because the first year I coached, I was like, man, I'm not good enough at this to really coach. Like the best player on the team, I think she was better than me, definitely. So I went and started taking my own lessons, and that was actually really great for me. I had a really good time at this Rally Point Tennis Club in Smithfield, Rhode Island. If anyone is from there, really good community, and it was really nice to be coached. I miss being in the classroom. I miss like learning. I miss being a student. So going and being taught how to play tennis with a group of people that were also struggling to learn how to play tennis was really rewarding.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a good time. Being a student's great. Everyone should be a student for life.
Yeah.
Lifetime learners.
Exactly. Never, ever stop.
No, definitely not.
Well, we need to wrap it up sometime soon here.
About to have some Thai food.
I know.
I'm excited.
Let's play Ridiculous Theme, the game where we come up with a ridiculous theme for a board game.
Man, I can do that.
Right? Are you looking around the room?
I am. I'm absolutely looking around the room because I want to figure out.
Fan computer.
Ceiling fan computer. Yeah. I got nothing for that. So I see a marker. I think it'd be really fun if we had a game where the primary component was markers that you smelled because markers smell really good. Maybe there's a blindfold. You have to identify what color of marker is what you're smelling. Yeah. You're like the sommelier of marker.
Nice.
That's what you do.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty ridiculous, but is it ridiculous enough?
I mean,
that's the question.
To take away the sniffing markers part, you could just try and describe the marker or describe a color. No, I mean, games do that, but describe a color without using any words that say the color, obviously, or something that is that color. So
that actually sounds really coherent to me because one of the creative writing exercises we would do would be write a paragraph without using a color but make sure you communicate that color to someone.
Oh.
Yeah, so that actually sounds really fun to me.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It's like a good exercise. I bet there's a lot of things diving into create. Oh my goodness, this is relevant for you. Why don't we do the Bad Larry?
Oh, these Bad Larrys? The board game?
Bad Larry's board game.
I mean, how many board games are out there that are about golf? There's probably a few, but how many are out there that are about the golf balls and their personal lives?
Yeah,
that's the real question. Yeah. To tie it into my trip, we have great games about dinosaurs and dinosaurs with lasers, but do we have any games about dinosaurs with lasers on bicycles? And I don't think we do.
No.
And I think that game would be super good.
Yeah.
Is it a racing game? Is it a game about extinction? Is it both? I think so. It's the last laser dinosaur bicycle Grand Prix before the apocalypse.
That's the name of it right there.
The whole name. Yeah. So you have the dinosaurs that are actually racing, but then you also have the betters. You have dinosaurs in formal wear. These are the partiers.
Ooh.
Yeah. This game's great. I don't know what it's about, but I'm into it.
I am totally imagining you pick your cyclist, you might have a raptor and they can go quick. Or you have a T-Rex who can't change tires very well.
Poor T-Rexes. It's such a bad rap.
Bronchiosauruses have a hard time going under underpasses.
Yeah,
That's a weird way to say it.
Underpasses. Unders. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a totally different game about going. All characters are named something under wood, and they are going underground into the underworld because they are undercover. And that's actually a pun that I didn't even do on purpose because they're undercover because they're underground, but they're also spies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under.
And so this is the underground or something like that. This game's good too.
Oh my goodness. Look at this. Bam, bam, bam. Ridiculous theme. Left, right.
So I hope what happens with these ridiculous themes is that, we're never going to pursue them. But whoever out there is listening, at least one of you needs to make this game.
Right?
Yeah.
That's like the dream is if I ever get big enough, there's actual play podcasts where they play D&D, right? And they get fan art all the time of their characters and the episodes. And I'm like, that's so cool. That's so cool. I hope my version of that is people making a ridiculous theme that we talk about.
Sounds fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah.
You could have a game design contest around the ridiculous theme.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, pick one of the ridiculous themes. And design a game around it, and we'll judge the best ones. And best is clearly determined by how ridiculous it is,
while still being fun.
Yeah, well,
maybe there's 2 prizes.
Yes, like best in show. And least in show.
Least in show is the most ridiculous.
Yes,
thing. So
absolutely.
It's that one's still a very fun one to have.
Definitely.
Oh my gosh.
I want that one.
I love that name so much. I love it. Oh, yeah. That's a great idea. I'll probably steal that. I won't.
Dude.
Yeah.
Sounds fun to me.
I know. Maybe that'll be like my 1-year anniversary. When I get to my 1-year anniversary, we'll do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How far away is that?
It's, I think I started March or April. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much I would say, you're here in person. This is weird. How do I close out a show in person?
No. We get Thai food.
Yeah, we go get Thai food. Bye.
Do we?
No, but you got to plug your stuff.
Yes.
So thank you for, I'll introduce that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on. It has been so much fun getting to know you over the past couple days. It's weird. We interacted outside of the podcast before recording.
We had our own little design retreat weekend or something.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Exactly.
I'm into it.
So why don't you plug your social website, everything, your email address, whatever you want. I don't know.
Yeah, cool.
Your social security number, whatever you got.
Yeah, it's 9 numbers. You can figure out the rest from there.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's see. BoardGameBike.com is the blog website. I am on YouTube as Board Game Bike. I'm on Twitter as Board Game Bike. The best way to get in touch with me is probably to send me an email. I'm Phil@BoardGameBike.com. Or on the website, there's like a contact form. If you are so inclined to care about my ridiculous dog blog, you can go to thereisnogoodboy.com. And if you want to know about Larry's, that's on a different YouTube channel. It's like my personal thing to share with my family, but it's out there. Search for These Bad Larrys. Phil Amylon. That's me.
Nice. I love it.
Thanks. And if anyone is listening who happens to live in like Reno or Carson City or Sacramento or San Francisco, I think those are probably the next big major cities I'm going to be in on my bike trip. I'd love to get together and play some board games.
Thank you so much for listening. It was a blast getting to know Phil while he was here. He's such a cool person. If you're in one of those areas that he mentioned, shoot him an email. See if you can't get together, because he is someone you should get to know even more. I've got a couple of news things. Today, the day this airs, ProtoCon tickets go on sale. ProtoCon is a in-person event here in Utah. It'll be 2 days this time. The first day will be Friday, January 28th, 2022, and it will have a designer's workshop where Jeff Beck, I think, who did Intrepid, he's going to be running a workshop. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'll go find out, and then I can tell you next time. Next week, I'll tell you. Maybe I'll have Jeff come on and talk about it. Who knows? And then the next day, January 29th, is the main event. It's an all-day thing. You come, you play games, you come and you play designers' newest games they're working on. Last time I went in 2020, just before the pandemic, it was really, really cool to see just how big the community was. And there were plenty of people there who were just there to play test games. And when I say play test, sometimes you think they're like, not going to be great quality, but there were games that felt like they were ready. You felt like, well, can I just buy this now? And they're like, no, it's still a work in progress. Or, hey, there's going to be a Kickstarter for it. Oros was there, which was hugely successful and awesome. So whether you're a designer or just somebody who loves playing games, this is going to be a great, friendly convention. And it's just down the street from me. So come to Utah, come hang out with me. It'll be great. It'll be such a good time. There's also a raffle. Last time I went, I won a copy of Tim Fowler's game Sabotage. And I went up and I chatted with him while he was playtesting Burgle Brothers 2. And that was really, really cool. He was so nice. Just, man, that guy is awesome. And then my wife won a copy of Red Raven Games, Ryan Lockett's game, Rome. He had a co-designer on that one, and I am spacing on the name, but we won a copy of that, and that's just a go-to game for us. It's such an easy game to teach and fun to play. We love that one. So you can win games through a raffle. You get to play games. There will be open gaming. There will be designers signed up at tables that have their game running, and it's just such an awesome event. Anyway, that's all the news. If you enjoyed the episode, if you're enjoying the podcast, rate the podcast on iTunes. That would help the podcast get seen more and end up in people's suggested podcasts, and that would help me grow. Or if there's people that you think would enjoy the show, spread it around. What better way to grow than word of mouth? You can follow me on Twitter @NerdOutWithUs. You can email me, theboardgamecommunityshow@gmail.com. If there's somebody that you think would be a good guest on the show, or someone in the community that you're like, I wonder what they do outside of board games, or, I wonder what they have going on. I just love getting to know people, and I hope that comes across, because I have an absolute blast with every single guest. And if it's you, great. We can set something up too. Easy. All right. That's it. Until next week, keep nerding out.